Has life been rigged from the start, or was it designed that way? This video is going to get a little black pilly. I feel like it's going to be the most black pill adjacent video maybe I ever make, but I want to say that there will be positive messages thrown in throughout this video, and I don't think anything I'm going to talk about is a cause to give up. If anything, it should just motivate you even more to do something about the situation that a lot of us are currently living in. So I watched a few clips from a Diary of a CEO podcast where he had a couple entrepreneurs on. One guy, Gary's Economics, who I think makes YouTube videos. And he's more of like the standing up for the average person and changing systemic issues within our society. And the other guy was more talking about how everyone can just become an entrepreneur, and the problem is that people don't have enough agency in their lives and they don't feel like they have enough control over their lives, and feeling helpless is what causes them all their pain, and that's on them to figure out. Now, I think the answer is a little bit in between as usual. We'll sift through the nuance, and I'll discuss what I think about the current system we're living in, which, you know what, I'm just going to be honest, it is quite rigged. And to say that everybody can make it is just absolute BS in the current system. I'm not saying that's how things should be, but that's really how things are. And I feel a lot of the younger generation is being brought up within, especially the self-improvement sphere, to believe that they should become an entrepreneur, that everyone should own a business, that we should all be trying to strive for like 10K a month online doing sales or some shit. And why that's just almost kind of predatory depending on how you present that sort of information. As I remove myself farther and farther from self-improvement, I begin to have more and more empathy for the people who didn't make it. And I see more and more people not make it the older that I get. So there's people who have been watching these self-improvement videos forever. They're being told the same advice over and over, and they're even taking action. They're doing a lot of the things that these creators, and myself included, have said and applied. And yet, despite putting in just as much work as I have over the span of, let's say, like 3 years, it took me about 3 years for my YouTube channel to really start gaining a bit of traction and for me to make any sort of money off of it. I didn't make any money for the first 3 years of YouTube. There could be a person exactly like me who's just as good at making videos who will not make it, who will not see the fruits of their efforts, because that's just the way that a lot of this is. A lot of making it as a business owner or as a YouTuber, a decent chunk of it is luck-based. It just so happened that my YouTube video about nofap and cold showers and journaling for 90 days happened to hit the algorithm at the right time when it was No Nut November and people were searching this kind of stuff. And finally that snowballed my channel, and then I started getting consistent higher views, enough to start getting sponsorships rolling in and enough to start making AdSense revenue, a good enough amount to almost live off of at that point, but it wasn't quite there yet. But there's, for every one person like that who finally saw that success with YouTube, there are thousands of stories of people who have failed at it, who have to give up. And that survivorship bias can be very damaging to someone who's trying to like force this lifestyle that, number one, they might not even like, but number two, just might not work out in the end, just because they see the highlights of the people who really did make it, which are the people who are pushing for you to become a YouTuber or to have this type of lifestyle. Now, there's nothing wrong with inspiring people to go after their dreams. Like, God damn, man. The way I got here was how I've talked about in a lot of my videos, being delusionally optimistic. It doesn't make sense for me to get to this point. The odds of me being here at this stage of my YouTube career is extremely small. And if you bet on yourself and believe in yourself and you do all of this hard work, the idea that anybody who does that is going to make it is simply false. It's simply false. It goes against the laws of statistics regarding all of this stuff. The statistics are something like 25% of businesses fail within their first year. And then after 5 years, it goes up to almost like 80%. 80% of people who try to start fail. And the reason that happens, that people who have the survivorship bias, who got through that 80%, they were the anomaly, they say, oh, it's just because those people didn't work hard enough. Well, okay, maybe it is the case that I outworked most people and I got to this point in my YouTube career. But that can't be the case for everyone in this. It can't be. I know people work just as hard as I have, or work even harder, and something about their channel just doesn't hit the algorithm, and they don't get to this level of views and being able to make a living off of this. That's just the reality of things. And to push this narrative that anybody or everybody can make it, let's say that, because anybody technically can. Pretty much anybody who's the average person could understand the algorithm and the workings of YouTube or any other business. Apply this to any other business with the way I'm talking about it. They could understand how to run these things, how to hack an algorithm, or how to hack a certain level or skill in business in order to see more results than most people. And then at the same time, not only working smarter, but working harder than most people. They might just never get to the point where they thought they would. And that, in a lot of cases, can cause as much stress and anxiety and depression and destroy your self-belief as doing nothing about your current situation could. And so a lot of the solutions just pushed around by a lot of these hustle culture, self-improvement, make money online type of dudes is just work harder than everybody else and you'll get there. Just become an entrepreneur. Everybody's just got to become an entrepreneur. That was part of the talk with Gary's Economics and the other guy on Diary of a CEO. Was this guy was arguing that, well, the solution is kind of just for everybody to have some sort of side gig or side hustle and have their own business so that they can scale it and then they can finally be financially secure. The idea that everyone can do that is outrageous. The idea that you just have to fucking work 24/7 and that people want to do that and want to become an entrepreneur is crazy. Nobody should be forced to become an entrepreneur just to make ends meet in this country. That is absurd. And it isn't even possible for everyone to become an entrepreneur anyways, because one, not everybody's going to make it. Survivorship bias is very real within the people who do make it, and that clouds their judgment. But number two, if everybody's an entrepreneur, who's going to be the employees? There has to be working class citizens in a country, in a society, in order for it to sustain itself. We need nurses, lawyers, other practitioners, construction workers. These are the people that literally keep our society going. And if we tell everybody, oh, those jobs aren't going to pay you enough just to make ends meet and live in this country. You just got to become an entrepreneur. What happens to society? We get a whole society growing up of people who just want to run their own businesses, don't want to, or just want to employ other people. And yet nobody wants to be an employee anymore, because that's the big narrative now online, is that being a wage slave is bad. Going to a 9-to-5 is bad. Like somehow it got to that point where doing good things for the world, being an average citizen, doing your part every single day that isn't related to building a business is bad. Like that is how we know fundamentally that the game is rigged in the favor of the very few who pull out of this race on top. Another big point within the talk on Diary of a CEO was the sense of agency. The argument the guy had, who's the entrepreneur, who's kind of standing up for people who are entrepreneurs and tells everybody they should be entrepreneurs, is that the reason people feel so depressed or anxious about their current life situation is because they have no sense of agency. And he said, I'm glad that when I was broke, because this guy was broke and he's one of the survivors of business. When I was broke, I'm so glad I had people around me telling me you can achieve anything in this life as long as you just work for it. I'm glad that I took responsibility for where I was at, for being poor and didn't have a victim mentality, because that's what really drives people to be depressed and anxious. And if more people just took responsibility for where they're at, then we'd have more prosperity and we'd see more success within the average person. True and false when it comes to that sort of claim. I think all of us should take a bit of responsibility for what we can control in our lives. But how much we can control and where we start off in life is very, very unpredictable, and it's not as certain as it seems. It is just crazy to think of someone going up to like a poor person who was born into poverty and saying, you got to take responsibility for this. We're not going to help you. You got to just work your ass off to get out of there. When the reason they're there is not their own doing at all. Their circumstances are not their own doing at all, and having no empathy for them being there or trying to set up society in a way in which actually helps people in lower incomes. It's just crazy. Yes, everybody should take responsibility for where they're at, but you can't delude yourself into thinking everything's your fault. Everything that happens to you is your fault. It's something Gary Vee actually says a lot. He's like, everything that happens to me is my fault. I got to deal with this shit. And that's like it's almost as bad, or it's just as bad as being a victim all the time, as having learned helplessness. It sounds negative saying all this, but I think people need to not delude themselves in this way at the very least. I think being optimistic about the future is necessary, is knowing things will get better to some degree, even if it is unpredictable. Telling yourself that, having that belief is extremely powerful. It is powerful because a lot of your beliefs shape your reality. I can prove that to you right now. How you believe certain people are deep down, the human nature aspect of things. Like if you see somebody and you naturally think to yourself, oh, that person's not trustworthy, that says more about your beliefs than the actual person, especially if you don't know them. It's the same thing with believing in yourself. If you can't see opportunities within your life when they come up, which are opportunities, then part of that is because you have the wrong beliefs around life and what you think you can achieve. But that only works up to an extent, right? There's the reality of the situation, and that is that not everybody's meant to be an entrepreneur. Not everybody who starts a business is going to make it. And it just baffles my mind that the average person who's making minimum wage can't afford to live in a one-bedroom apartment. I think that says so much about how corrupted the system currently is. And I don't know if capitalism is the only thing at fault here. I think it has a lot more to do with huge corporations monopolizing everything and being very greedy and not being taxed and just hoarding a lot of money that they don't need for safety reasons and because they're afraid and they want all this power. And you could argue that this is because of capitalism. They wouldn't have become these types of people in a different economic system. Maybe, but I think this system could work under certain circumstances, and we've seen it work better in other countries. But right now, the average person in America can't afford a lot of things, and they have to be working 2 jobs or working outside of the scope of their hours that they were assigned to, just to make enough money to actually be able to afford necessities. And if that is how the system is set up for the average person, then the system is broken. And so this is not to deter you from pursuing your passions and your dreams. If you know that entrepreneurship is what you want to do, if you know you want to become this creator and monetize your passion, which also comes with its own set of negatives. I personally find the pros better than the cons. That's why I did it. Then fucking go after it, man. At least for like half a decade, go after it. And don't let the failures get to you. But for the people who feel like they're being forced into an entrepreneurial lifestyle, there's nothing wrong with having a 9-to-5 or working for someone else. Doesn't make you below anyone else. It shouldn't, is what I'm really trying to say. It shouldn't. It shouldn't be rigged in this way. And talking about this, making a video about it, I think gets more people to want to speak up and actually do something about it. I'm currently writing a novel about 20-something-year-old navigating through a post-pandemic world, and I think it's going to be really relatable. There's a bit of a sci-fi aspect to it where his reality splits in two, and he's able to see into a parallel reality. Very interesting stuff, and I think you guys will like it a lot if you like the themes of my channel. If you want to check out updates for that book, I have updates every week in my newsletter. If you want to subscribe to that newsletter, link in the description. And I have my community as well. A lot of you guys know, self-mastery community, where we talk in a video call once a week. And it's just a fun way to collaborate with people who are really interested in growth and personal development and wanting their lives to be better. So if you want to check that out, the link is in the description as well. And that is it. Let me know your thoughts in the comments.